Supreme Court Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died at the age of 87. Just weeks before the start of the court's fall session and in the shadow of a presidential election now just 45 days away. Now a time for mourning for a remarkable career and life well lived, but also a loss rocking the political universe tonight. The battle lines over the court's future already being drawn. Let's begin with Pete Williams.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was consistently one of the U.S. Supreme Court's moderate to liberal members. First as a lawyer, then a judge and a justice, she believed the Constitution guaranteed women greater rights.
Over the course of now over 2 centuries, it has grown and developed so that more and more people are included in that concept, we the people.
Rejected after law school for a Supreme Court clerkship because she was a woman, she began her legal career as a law professor and pioneering advocate for women's legal rights, successfully arguing a string of cases before the Supreme Court that made it easier to sue for sex discrimination. It was President Carter who first appointed her to be a federal judge.
She has genuinely distinguished herself.
Then in 1993, President Clinton put her on the Supreme Court, making her the second woman justice.
It contributes to the end of the days when women, at least half the talent pool in our society, appear in high places only as one-at-a-time performers.
At her confirmation hearing, she clearly stated her support for the right to abortion.
This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity.
And as a justice, she voted to uphold abortion rights. She wrote the court's opinion putting an end to the men-only policy at VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, saying it was based on outmoded stereotypes. She joined the court's majorities in striking down the death penalty for juveniles and in ruling that, quote, death is not a suitable punishment for a mentally retarded criminal. She also voted to roll back Bush administration policies in the war on terror. A blistering opinion in a case about equal pay for women renewed her standing as a feminist icon.
We welcome today Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
She was nicknamed Notorious RBG, a play on a rapper's name, and featured in a documentary movie.
I am 84 years old and everyone wants to take a picture with me.
She married a fellow student in college, Martin Ginsburg. They had 2 children. Years later, she recalled receiving some practical advice on her wedding day.
It pays, Mother said, it pays sometimes to be a little deaf. I have followed that advice with only occasional lapses, not only at home, but in the places I have worked, and even in relating to my colleagues at the Supreme Court.
A passionate opera fan, she appeared in several Washington productions, in full costume but in silent roles. Regular checkups and early intervention helped her recover from 3 surgeries for colon, pancreatic, and lung cancer. And doctors inserted a stent after discovering blockage in a heart artery. She missed surprisingly few days on the bench. But now the court's most powerful liberal justice is gone. Pete Williams, NBC News at the Supreme Court.
And Pete joins us now. Pete, what more do we know tonight about Justice Ginsburg's death?
Well, the court said she died today at her home here in Washington, that she was surrounded by family members. And they say the cause of death was pancreatic cancer, which of course is what everyone was fearing when that was diagnosed. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, has issued a statement tonight. He says, our nation has lost a jurist of historic stature. We at the Supreme Court have lost a cherished colleague. Today we mourn, but with confidence that future generations will remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg as we knew her, a tireless and resolute champion of justice. Lester.
And Pete, we know the conversations are going on right now in the halls of power. What could this mean for the balance of the court?
Well, it leaves it now a Supreme Court with 2 issues. Number one, it's a tied Supreme Court, just 8 justices. The last time we went through this, after the death of Antonin Scalia, the court sort of sat back and didn't make any important decisions. But now you have a court that's with eight justices, 5 solid conservatives, and just 3 justices on the other side. So will this be a term in which they want to go ahead and try to make as many decisions as they can? And remember, Lester, just the week after the presidential election, the court hears a very important case on the future of Obamacare, and this Supreme Court could be called upon to make decisions about the presidential election if, as in 2000, a case about the election ends up in the Supreme Court.
Pete Williams tonight. Pete, thank you. And Hallie Jackson joins us now. Hallie, the president at a rally right now. What are you hearing about his reaction to all this?
We don't know yet, Lester, and it's not even clear if the president has been informed of the death of Justice Ginsburg. He started speaking at this rally prior to the news breaking. We are still working to report out whether the White House was given or may have been given a heads up by the Supreme Court or by the Ginsburg family. But based on the president's comments at the rally, Lester, he has talked about the Supreme Court in the context broadly of nominees and the importance of judicial nominees to his campaign. But it appears as though, and I'm just looking at my screen to see him at the rally now, he may not have been told. So again, it's not certain, but if that is the case, this would be truly an extraordinary split screen where most of the country, including the president's own family members, his own chief of staff now tweeting about this, is aware of the death of Justice Ginsburg, and President Trump may not be. We can expect some kind of a statement from the White House. I'm just told that by one White House official. And another senior administration official says this is a scenario that was not completely implausible. There is an expectation now that the ball in many ways is in Mitch McConnell's court, of course, the Senate Majority Leader. But the White House and this official acknowledging the potential that there will be a lot of pressure on some Senate Republicans, specifically Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, on this issue of whether a nominee will get through or could get through before either Election Day or an inauguration if President Trump does not, for example, win re-election. So a critical political moment, Lester. This is really setting up drama like we haven't seen in Washington, D.C. Keep in mind that the president has made this issue of judicial nominees so central to his campaign, so central to his administration so far. It is something he talks about at every major speech that he gives, including just a couple of weeks ago at the Republican National Convention, Lester. The president, over the summer, when Justice Ginsburg was hospitalized, wished her well in the Rose Garden, but his chief of staff around the same time was asked what would happen if, for example, there were a vacancy before Election Day. And Mark Meadows said at the time he had no reason to believe that the president would do anything other than move forward on another nomination. Keep in mind, the president just released within the last week or so his list of potential Supreme Court nominees were this scenario to happen, not in the context of any death, of course, of any nominee, but in the context of a campaign. This is something that the president did during the 2016 campaign as well. So there are a lot of moving pieces, and I can tell you that White House officials are certainly very on top of this news tonight, even if the president may or may not be aware, Lester. We'll come back to you as soon as we know more on that.
Anything coming from the Biden camp?
So he also was campaigning in Minnesota today, Lester. Both he and the president had these campaign events. And as this news was breaking, Joe Biden was also what we would call out of pocket. He was on a plane traveling back to Wilmington, Delaware. So it would be surprising if we did not hear from the Biden campaign or from Joe Biden himself. We've already heard statements from other presidents, including former President Bush and Carter and others. So clearly, this is something that is reaching a critical mass now.
All right, Hallie, thank you. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an institution in Washington and had a huge following. What does this mean, not just politically, but for the country? I want to bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, Ginsburg's death comes just 46 days before the election. What are the political implications here?
Well, look, it's obviously given how close we are to the presidential election, how central the Supreme Court has been, as Hallie brought up, to Donald Trump's sort of political legacy. I mean, look, one of the things I will go to my grave believing is that I think Donald Trump won in 2016 at the end because of the vacant Supreme Court seat that had been sitting there vacant due to the death of Antonin Scalia. So I do think it had a huge impact on Donald Trump becoming president. So I do expect the president to be pretty aggressive here and likely attempt to at least perhaps name a nominee, almost to put somebody out there as a way to perhaps tantalize his political base, maybe in hopes that he can somehow get skeptical Republicans back. But I'll tell you this, she is such an icon. You know, you think about Supreme Court justices, not many people know they're 9, but not many become as famous as her. There's Thurgood Marshall, My Lifetime. There's Ruth Bader Ginsburg that just sort of leapt above the rest of the justices. And, I think this could stir some passions in the liberal base of this country in ways that I think could also fire up the Democrats. So I think this is one of those things that it's political dynamite. It's explosive. It's all of those things because it's a vacancy, and it could be such a tipping point for the Supreme Court ideologically for quite some time. But I think, in some ways, it's hard to think you can energize this presidential race anymore, but having this Supreme Court opening will.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. NBC's Casey Hunt covers Congress for us. Casey, Justice Ginsburg's replacement will have to be approved by the U.S. Senate, as we've noted, which right now at least is controlled by Republicans. How might this play out?
Well, Lester, in many ways, it is impossible to imagine a more combustible scenario in the U.S. Senate. The tensions are already so high, the partisan passions so intense, just 40 plus days ahead of an election. To have something like this happen, which under normal circumstances, or more normal circumstances, I should say, is already such a something that inflames passions on both sides and drives people into their partisan corners. It's going to likely be that much worse. And there is going to be enormous pressure on some of the moderate Republicans in the Senate to potentially buck their leader, Mitch McConnell, who's been pretty clear. He's been asked, will you fill a vacancy in an election year when control of the White House is on the line? And remember, Democrats very angry about how he handled the death or the nomination in the wake of Antonin Scalia's death when he refused to confirm Merrick Garland, the Obama nominee, to the court. And the question is going to be, do these Republicans think that they should use the same standard in this case? Should they say it's up to the American people to select the president who's going to be able to nominate the person to fill this vacancy? So there are in particular 3 senators, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, she is up for re-election, and Mitt Romney, the former Republican presidential nominee, who are really going to be scrutinized under the spotlight here and who could potentially swing this against Mitch McConnell. But right now, of course, everyone in the Senate focused on condolences, thinking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's family, her legacy. So I don't anticipate we're going to see too much politicking along these lines until tomorrow morning. Lester.
All right. Casey Hunt, thank you very much. I want to bring in Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, you've covered Washington for a very long time. You've heard us kind of set the table here as to all that surrounds this. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are also personal because I knew her fairly well. She married my husband and me back in 1997. I knew her as a great lover of classical music and certainly of opera, her relationship with Justice Scalia, the fact that she couldn't get a job coming out of law school. And she shared that with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman on the court. And she told a story just after Martin Ginsburg died, only 2 weeks later. I saw her at a private dinner in Aspen at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and she had come to Aspen with her grandson and was at a dinner for Justice O'Connor's 80th birthday. And she told the most affecting story about how much Justice O'Connor meant to her and did an impeccable imitation of Justice O'Connor's high-pitched voice, telling her what to do when she was first on the court and the Chief Justice, Justice Rehnquist, had assigned her to write her first majority opinion. And she was really scared. This woman who was indomitable and so strong, a teeny woman, but with such a spine, and had done all of these remarkable things as a lawyer, as a feminist icon, and then as a judge, and now on the court, the second woman on the court. And she was so frightened to write this majority opinion. And she said, Justice O'Connor said to her, just do it, put one foot in front of the other, you just do it. And that Justice O'Connor was her sister on the court. She referred to her that way. And that she gave her the roadmap of how to do this when Justice O'Connor, of course, had to plow that territory for herself years earlier as the first woman. So she was an extraordinary woman and a feminist icon, of course, but also a great human being with a dry wit